Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the official Nerd Talk channel. My name is Tyler, aka Mind of a Nerd, joined by my co-host AJ Reacts to. We are back for another episode of Originals versus Remakes, and today we are starting the spooky season. October has arrived, ladies and gentlemen. This is my Christmas. When I tell you, I get so excited for the month of October. I haven't decorated yet. We are not recording in October. If you guys follow me, you know I go all out in October. This is all decked out. But October is my Christmas, and I am so excited to participate in giving you guys not one, not two, not three, not four, but five OVRs for the month of October. We are so excited. We have so many of these lined up for you guys, and we are starting with The Ring. So without further ado, let's get into the original, titled Ringu, released in 1998, directed by Hideo Nakata, and tells the story of a reporter and her ex-husband investigating a cursed videotape that is rumored to kill the viewer 7 days after watching it. So I watched this movie for the first time last week. I watched it with AJ. I bought the Arrow Video 4K, which, if you are a fan of this movie, I highly recommend getting that 4K. It is a phenomenal transfer, has great special features, and if you love this movie, that is the way you should have this movie. It's a phenomenal 4K. That's the only reason why I'm not getting rid of it. Anyway, so I watched this movie for the first time, and I had seen the remake before, and I was actually excited for this one because I haven't seen too many Japanese horror movies. Most of the foreign movies I've seen are Korean, mainly only Korean, to be honest. Train to Busan. I think I've seen some French in there, but I don't think I can remember like a Japanese horror movie. Japanese. They a little freaky, so I was excited to see what this would bring. And this movie to me was rather boring. And there are positives about it. I think it nails the tone of, you know, the creepiness of it. It is creepy. There were scenes where I was on edge. Um it's shot very well. I don't know how it looked in 1998, but like I said, the 4K transfer of this looked phenomenal. It looks fantastic. The story on paper is good. I think they improve on it later, but I think the story is good, and the like I said, I like the idea, but the movie kind of just feels very surface level to me. It feels very, this is what the story is, and let's just do da ba 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 boom, and that's kind of it. It kind of just goes through the motions, and it has a honestly atrocious ending. I hate the ending to this movie. I don't really like the ending at all, and I'm not talking about what they think they have to do. I'm talking about what comes after that. That I find really stupid, and we'll talk about it later because they keep it in the remake. But I find both endings really stupid. But they do something in the remake that I kind of like, that kind of fixes it. But this movie is fine. I can see why people in 1998 were like, "Oh my god, this is horrifying," but I don't know. I think even The Omen was creepier than this. AJ, what are your thoughts on the original?
So I watched this movie for the first time last week, and I had seen the remake, the 2002 remake, about three or four times. So I'm very familiar with the story here. So watching this original film, I was hyped going into it. I was like, I was anticipating it, and while watching it, there were so many things where I was just like, this is the remake does it, these things better. And that's kind of unfortunate because the one of the downfalls to this movie for me is that I had seen the remake before it. Because I could just point certain things out. um as far as the story and concept, I absolutely love the story and concept of The Ring. You should watch a cursed videotape, and you get a phone call, you're gonna die in 7 days, you have to try to figure out how to lift the curse or whatever. that on paper, like you said, is great. Now, the movie itself and the remake, kind of suffers from this as well. This film is basically an investigation film. They're going to this place or they're going to that place to try to figure out, how to stop this. What is the origin of the tape? Things like that. But there's not that many like frights. There are creepy and eerie tones to the film, but there's not like many kills. There's not many like scares, either jump scares or anything like apparitions or seeing things. There's not a whole lot of that. So it kind of makes the movie slow and like a little dull. I feel like if both movies, I feel like if they had more frights throughout the film, it would be a lot more entertaining, a lot more enjoyable to watch, and a lot more digestible as far as the content and the information. But overall, I do like the concept here. So you know, I enjoyed it, but it could have been a lot better.
So going back to what you said about the investigation part, while watching this and the remake, a couple movies come to mind that I think do this concept a lot better.
Mhm,
Smile, you brought that up to me numerous times. I think
mhm,
Smile does this concept a good bit better. Another movie that came to mind, and I don't know if people are gonna see what I'm saying, but Final Destination comes to mind because you have, there's not like a curse or a videotape, but they are cursed, by cheating death, and they're
mhm,
cursed by they're going to die. And there's not really an investigation, but it's so much like, oh, this person's gonna die. Okay, we got to figure out how to save them.
yeah.
And I think that movie does a better job at this concept because you have the constant fear, like, oh, are they gonna save them? I don't know. And then you have the added element of, oh yeah, well they die anyway. But it
Mhm,
happens throughout the movie. It's not just a little in the beginning, a little at the end, and then the
yeah.
middle is just them figuring it out. You
Yeah.
know, another movie that does this very well is The Omen. The
Mhm,
Omen has its pacing issues in and of its own right, but
mhm,
The Omen does have those like accidental kills sprinkled throughout.
mhm,
So it adds that horror to it.
yeah.
These movies don't really have that, which I guess kind of works, kind of doesn't. I just they needed to add a little bit more in there.
Mhm. I
That's
agree. I agree, and I think when going back to Final Destination, that's actually a good point. It's creative. I think
hmm
people have to sit down and think, okay, how is this kill gonna happen? How, and they have to get creative with it and have layers to it. With this, you don't have that. It's just pretty much the investigation the entire time, which it's fine. Like it's kind of a cliche as far as like supernatural horror. So like it's okay, but it just needs more intrigue
That
of that.
intrigue comes in the form of the Ring 2002 remake, directed by Gore Verbinski, one of the oddest filmographies we have talked about. So he's directed Mouse Hunt, which is Home Alone with mice. I like that movie a good bit. This movie, the three original Pirates of the Caribbean movies, which are bangers, Rango, The Lone Ranger, and A Cure for Wellness. Such an odd filmography.
Like, dude, what
But
are you doing?
stars Naomi Watts, Martin Henderson, and David Dorfman as the young Aiden, and tells essentially the same story of this cursed videotape wreaking havoc, if you will, and these this ex couple trying to figure out how to stop it. So I saw the remake for the first time last year during October season. I watched it with AJ. Bought the um 20th anniversary steelbook. And this is one that I had somehow always missed. It was one I always knew was around, but I had never gotten to it. And watching it for the first time, I was like, it's creepy. It's cool. Again, I like the idea, but kind of just drags a little bit, and it's fine. Um, Upon this rewatch, I did appreciate it more, and I had a good time. I had a good time the last time, but I had a better time this time, especially coming off how mid the remake, the original was for me. Um, right off the bat, I think the acting in this movie is very good. Naomi Watts knows what she's doing. I haven't really seen her in anything. I think I've only seen her in like one thing. I can't remember what it was. But oh, the King Kong Peter Jackson. She's very good in that. Um, she's good in this movie. I think she does a good job. The actor playing her ex husband, I think, does a good job. Although he has a couple really bad lines. There's a line, I forgot what the line was. It's towards the end of the movie where I was like, oh, that was really bad. Um, the child actor who plays her son, I thought did pretty good in the movie. Kid actors, it's either going to be horrible or great. I think he somehow found that middle ground. He's fine. He doesn't annoy me. Um, the filmmaking, Gore Verbinski, do you like The Matrix and Underworld? I need to know because he was like, oh well, I don't want to pick a green one because that's The Matrix. I don't want to pick the blue one because Underworld is popping off right now. Well, I'll fuse them. Screw
Yep.
it. And
Somewhere
I'll
right
have
in the middle.
a blue green filter on my movie, which I think mostly works. But there's like a scene where they're walking up to like a memorial, and I was like,
Mhm.
it's like, what am I looking at, bro? And I was watching it on my TV. I wasn't even watching it on my phone at this point. I was like, what am I watching? I can't see a thing. The scares and frights in this movie when they're there work just like they work in the original. They're pretty much the same, scares. Um the pacing again is like very hit or miss, but I don't think it's as slow as the original for me. And I kind of felt like it mostly flew by, kind of. Um and I will say, without going too much, the ending here, while I don't it carries over from the original I don't like, but they tweak it to where it works, and I really like that. It sets up a sequel that I don't think they really acknowledge it, which is a shame. But I do like the setup for whatever they were planning to do or whatever. Yeah, I just think it's a modernized version of the original that improves on things that the original failed on. To be honest, what are your thoughts on the remake?
So I was trying to think of when I first watched this movie before the stream or before the recording, and I think it was maybe like 2013. It was like right after high school, right after I graduated high school. Showing my age, but yeah. So I had seen this movie quite a few times, maybe three or four, and I really enjoyed it. Like you said, the performances are great here. I really enjoy the performances, and I think that's one reason why it's better digestible for me. The story, like I said, I'm intrigued with this story. On paper, this concept and story is great. So we have the story and the performances; they all work for me. Now, the investigation portion of this movie, which is pretty much the end of the first act to the beginning of the third act, um, it's fine. I think, as well as the original, it just needs more frights. Needs more intrigue to be truly amazing. Um, but other than that, this is a very solid film, and I I haven't seen. Well, I've seen the sequel to this, but it's been a while. I wish that the other ones could measure up to this one, but for as far as this movie itself, I really enjoy it.
Moving on to the similarities between the two, and the movies are honestly mostly the same. If somebody
Right.
was like, "Oh, I don't like the remake because it's just The Ring, but American with white people." I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's a solid, argument, but
Mhm.
it is really just The Ring Americanized.
Yes.
I mean, but I feel like people don't like hearing that it might be the better version. I mean, I don't know. Like sometimes making sometimes listen, Hollywood, do not remake Train to Busan in America. Stop it. sometimes making an American version of a foreign film is for the better. But when the foreign film is a banger already, stop it.
Right. Right.
But Japanese ring is something that it could have been improved on, and it was improved on. And I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. But if you prefer the original, fine. The stories are the same. The characters might have different names, but the roles that they play in the movie are the exact same.
Hmm.
The ending is pretty much the same, minus like a tweak that we'll talk about in a second. The kills are the same. The setup in the beginning is the same, and then the death that's at the end of this movie is the same.
A lot of these sequences and scenes could be put side by side,
Mhm.
and they play out pretty much the same way. There
um,
are like just a few extra scenes like added to the remake, but not very many.
yeah. Moving on to the differences. As we touched on, the characters' names are different. That is something to note. Um, the scene where Samara comes out of the TV in both movies, easily the best scene in the movie. It's you know, it's iconic.
Iconic.
It
It's an iconic
in
scene.
it is. 9 out of 10 times I'll see these scenes that everyone talks about. It's iconic, and I'm like, it's fine. I Both versions of these movies, I smile ear to ear. I'm like, yo, is it?
Mhm.
In the original, it is. Me and Age were watching it. We were like, this is 1998. This is going to look so bad. And we were like, oh,
It's
that
actually not bad.
actually is practical. Like,
Right.
hey, that's pretty good. Um, and then the remake, they kind of CGI it, kind of not, but I
Mhm,
think it works.
mhm.
It still looks pretty good. They do this thing to where she's crawling out of the TV. She has like a glitch effect on her body. I thought that was pretty neat. Um, there is a difference in the remake. So when the girl, she watches the tape, in the original she turns off the TV, Samara's in the reflection of the TV. I actually really like that. That's a pretty good scare. AJ missed it, he wasn't looking at it,
I
but
was trying to see it. I was like, "Is she seeing something?" And I did not see it.
um and then in the remake they don't show her, they show like
Mhm.
a ghost
Uh,
like go
yeah,
woo.
yeah.
I
You
was
just see
like
like a ripple effect.
I was like, oh, okay, whatever.
I honestly felt like that was creepier. I don't know.
No, because in the original, there's no sound effect. There's no nothing. She just turns off the TV, and Samara's in the reflection of the TV. That was pretty neat. Um, Another difference is we get. I feel like they changed the story a bit in the remake to where we see Samara's father,
Hmm.
and we see like her in this place, hospital, something like that. We get a lot more backstory to the story, and I think it
Yes.
works. And that's, not to jump ahead, but that's why I enjoy this version of the story a lot more, because it's like the original, it feels so like, here's the story, that's it, you don't know anything.
Yeah.
And in some instances that works. You look at another movie we're going to talk about later this month, Halloween. We don't know anything about Michael Myers, and that's what makes it scary.
Hmm.
you know Not if your name is Rob Zombie. Another video. um Sometimes that makes it creepier, but with this it's like, no, I kind of want to know why is she in the tape. Like, that
Yeah.
is interesting, and the remake does a good job at fleshing that out.
Hmm.
Also, the ending to the remake is different than the original. So, spoiler alert if you have not seen The Ring. So, um the ex-husband, they think that they won, and then Samara comes out of the TV and kills the ex-husband. I love the death in the original. That is horrifying. I don't really understand. I don't know if the original was rated R. It might have been. It might have not been. But in the remake, they cut away from it, and
Hmm.
we only see it in this one blink image. Um, I didn't really like that. I was like, just show it. But in the original, she's like, "Oh, it was copied," and she's like, "Oh, I got to figure out where the source came from," and it sets up a sequel. I was like, okay, whatever. In the remake, they make like multiple copies,
Mhm.
and they basically suggest that the curse is just never gonna end, which that's interesting. You know, it in a weird way reminds me of Truth or Dare, so where they're like, yeah, the curse is never gonna end.
That's like Smile as well.
It's Smile,
Like
yeah.
it's gonna keep
um,
on going.
and that's like the main twist. Again, I don't know where they would have went with that. You know, again, I have not seen the sequel, but I've heard it's really bad. So I don't know, but that is a change. I think that's it, pretty
Um,
much.
I feel like I don't know if I missed it in the original, but in the remake, the son seems to have like some kind of supernatural abilities or like clairvoyance to where he knows what's gonna happen in the
That's different.
future.
That's
And
different.
I thought that was interesting, even though like the kid wasn't really featured all that much in the film, in either film. But they like felt the need to add that. I don't know if I like that more or not. It's just kind of there, but like it's not a lot done with it. But at the beginning of the remake, at the beginning of that film, she goes to his class and the teacher's like, yeah, I'm concerned about him because he's drawing these pictures and stuff. And the mom is like, he just lost his cousin 2 days ago, like, just cut him some slack. And she was like, the teacher was like, he drew these a couple weeks ago. And I was like, that's kind of creepy. So like I did like it in that aspect, but like nothing really came from that. Like there wasn't a whole lot talked about with that, but um yeah, that is a difference that the remake had.
And I don't remember if this was in the original, but in the remake,
Mhm.
Aiden is cousins with the girl that dies. I don't
Yeah,
remember if that's the
I
difference.
I can't remember really if it is either, but like it's a lot more established in the remake, and talked about. And yeah, the main character is the main character's niece that
Yeah.
watches the tape and dies. So that kind of has that connection there too. Oh, in the end of the remake, she finds his body, and she doesn't find his body in the original.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah, she doesn't
It's
find his
it's
body.
already
Yeah,
it's
she
already
goes
carried
to
out.
his apartment. Yeah, she goes to his apartment, and like she's looking for him, and like she finds out that he's not there in the original, but in the remake, she sees him, and she turns him around in the chair. And that was a huge difference to me, especially as far as the third act. In the original film, at the end of towards the end of the movie, when they're trying to dig up the entity's body, um they go down into the well, and the guy goes down into the well, and
Mhm.
it's done so differently in the
Yeah.
remake. um so there's this sequence where they're trying to dig up this body, and like for the longest time, they're like bringing buckets down to the well and like lifting up the buckets and like dumping the water out, like trying to get to the body, which it's just like kind of bizarre to me. Like, why don't you just like reach down and try to feel if the body's down there? To like, you don't have to empty the water out. And in the remake, it happens Final Destination style, where the TV falls and hits her in the head, and she falls down. She falls down the well. So it's the woman in the well rather than the guy in the well in the remake. Um, but it's just it's both are kind of comical because like you see in the original, you see them trying like struggling with the buckets trying to like get the water out. And I don't know what what they were really thinking with that, but that was definitely a difference with them, with the whole well scene at the end of the movie.
All right. Moving on to what we think the definitive version is, and at least for me, I'm gonna have to say the 2002 remake directed by Gore Verbinski. I think It is a very good horror movie, horror remake, and it takes everything that failed with the original. It basically it redevelops it and improves on it. And
Hmm.
it makes it more investing, more engaging,
Hmm.
and it's the version that I prefer. I love the tone of the original, and I
Hmm.
wish they would have carried that over to the remake, but other than that, I pretty much really enjoy everything else about the remake more, and it's one I'm probably gonna go back to.
My
Boo.
definitive version of this film will be hands down the remake. Although I liked the original, I liked it, and it's mainly because of the concept, mainly because of the authenticity of the film. But the remake got it. I love the cinematography here, so I don't think I talked about that. I think it's very well shot, and I think there are a lot of different shots that were cool that we didn't have in the original. The tone and that filter, man, like I don't know, I dig that filter. I'm Matrix looking or not, I like it. So yeah, I think this one, is a little bit more creepy. It has the right tone, it has the right amount of intrigue, and I feel like there are more things happening in the remake, and the performances are better. There are some performances in the original that just feel really stale, like kind of robotronic, like they're kind of going through the motions. And I'm like, give us a little bit of charisma, like give us some, something there. So, yeah, my definitive version is the remake.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of Originals versus Remakes. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you guys are excited for the month, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the bell for all notifications for future videos and Nerd Talk live streams. Also follow our Instagram. The link is down below. Our next episode of Originals versus Remakes will be for Fright Night, the originals 80s vampire classic. Very, very excited to talk about that, especially that original, because spoiler alert, it is a banger. So if you guys are excited for that, stay tuned for next week. Um, Once again, this is Nerd Talk, and we will see you on the next episode of Originals versus Remakes, everybody.